And welcome back. It's been about 2 minutes since I finished the last video, but I really wanted to get a couple of videos in tonight. I'm not sure when I'll be able to do the next set. Might be tomorrow night, might be this weekend, who knows. So I want to get the next couple of chapters in. 11 is about the same length as 10, but 12 is rather short, and so I'm going to go ahead and put those two together. Also, they kind of have a similar theme in this idea of the Israelites kind of complaining and murmuring and being just kind of annoying. And so I wanted to put them together for that reason as well. So we're going to get right into it. Numbers chapter 11, verse 1. And when the people complained, it displeased Jehovah, and Jehovah heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of Jehovah burnt among them, and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. So at the very edges of the camp, you have, remember, pillar of cloud by day, pillar of fire by night. These people start complaining, and understand this complaining is not a general, we think of our kids complaining, are we there yet, or I'm hungry, or something along those. This is not God punishing for that level of complaining. What's happening here is the people are complaining in such a way that they're looking back. They're looking back to Egypt. They're looking back to the alleged bounty that they had there. Maybe they're remembering the last Pharaoh, back when Joseph was in charge and stuff. Remember, they brought Egyptians with them. They probably married Egyptian wives. There's probably some Egyptian friends that journeyed with them. And they're looking back. Now we know that didn't work out too well for Lot's wife. And this idea of looking back is a lesson that is very, very prevalent throughout the Bible, not just the Old Testament, but the New Testament too. What does Paul talk to the Gentiles about? Don't look back to what you used to be. Don't look back to the false gods and the fake gods and the idol worship. Don't look back to that. So this complaining is not just simple, we're out in this wilderness wandering around and we're kind of tired of manna, although that's what it kind of seems like. But you're going to see here that this complaining is born out of a looking back to Egypt. And so God is frustrated with them because this again it's a lot of the ways, if you look at it the right way, they're basically looking at God and saying, God, we don't trust you. We don't think you know what you're doing. You brought us out of Egypt to let us die. And they've actually said that. Remember, they, back when they were first coming out, we're all going to die. And then God's like, okay, manna, okay, water. He provides for them the things that they need. But they keep saying, it was better back in Egypt. It wasn't better back in Egypt. They were enslaved. They were their babies were being killed. It was awful. And Jehovah did a great and wondrous thing bringing them out. And here they are complaining against God bringing them out. And they're not trusting him again to lead them to the promised land. Remember, we haven't got to the reason for the 40 years of wandering yet. We're at this point. They camped for a year. God was providing for them. He was setting up the tabernacle and kind of getting them their priesthood set up and really kind of establishing that whole theocracy thing. And then now they're marching towards the promised land. And so the complaining is out of hand. It's disrespectful, and God will be respected. He deserves it. He needs, he doesn't need anything, but he wants for the Israelites to realize who he is, because that's the thing that's going to preserve them, and they don't. so please understand the nature of this complaining. And so when they complain, he sends out fire, and it consumed those who were in the outer parts of the camp. And the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto Jehovah, the fire was quenched. And he called the name of the place Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burnt among them. So Taberah, oops, I thought I pulled that one up. I pulled up the latter one. So let me pull that up. It's verse 3. I always like this when they bring up a name, and the name is because of something. So Taberah means burning. I guess it's the Hebrew, or a Hebrew word for burning, is Taberah, because the fire of the Lord, or the fire of Jehovah, burnt among them. And the mixed multitude, see, now this is what I'm talking about. The mixed multitude that was among them fell a lusting. So this mixed multitude is where I get the idea of, there were Egyptians that were among them, there were sojourners. Up to this point, really, what other, they've talked about sojourners for a long time, all the way back to Exodus, all the way through Leviticus, and even into Numbers. We've talked about these sojourners, that non-Israelites, non-descendants of Abraham, who they're not just travelers passing through who happen to trade with Israel, but they journey with them. Sojourners are those who journey with them. And who they encountered but the Egyptians. And so these sojourners right now, this mixed multitude, were Egyptians who decided to cast their lots, or to throw their lot in with the Israelites. But they still have all of this baggage of the Egyptian religion. And so they are having this inordinate desire. That's this idea of lusting, is they want something that they don't have, that they don't have the authority to really ask for. God is providing them. What does the manna represent? The idea of manna from heaven was a type. It represented the bread of heaven, represented the word of God. And it wasn't enough for them. God was not providing enough for them according to their own desires. And so there's this this deeper meaning here for what's going on with all of the complaining and the multiculturalism, the mixed groups. This is a lesson. There's so many things going on here. Why does God not want the Israelites to, once they're established as a nation, of course they've already got their wives, they've already got their families, but why does God say, when you go in, don't take wives of these wicked nations in the promised land that I'm going to give you? He doesn't want the people being led astray. What happened in Genesis chapter 6? You had the line of Cain in Genesis 4 were all wicked. And then you had the line of Seth, who were mostly righteous people. Enoch was so righteous, we don't even know that he ever sinned. He was so righteous, God didn't even let him die, took him from the earth. Noah was so righteous that God used him and his family to preserve humanity. When what happened was that all of the sons of God, the faithful line of Seth, saw the daughters of men, the unfaithful, wicked line of Cain, they were good looking. And so they started to intermarry, and what ended up happening is you didn't have a sanctifying of the line of Cain, you had a corrupting of the line of Seth, until everybody except for Noah's family was so wicked that everything they did, everything they thought was wicked. And so this isn't a new thing here. God doesn't want the Israelites going in and being to participate in the cultures of these nations. And you have to understand that, especially in these more primitive times, and I say primitive in the sense of I guess technology or whatever, they didn't have the type of culture that we do in the sense of our entertainment, and especially right now there wasn't much in the way of sports. There wasn't much in the way of like TV and things like that, and so their culture centered around their religions. That was the core of their culture, and any forms of entertainment, the theater, everything about these nations and their culture centered around their religions. And so when Israel came into a land, God wanted them to push out, to drive out, and cause to flee or to eradicate all of the people that were there, because the culture is so contaminating. And so you have this major problem with the idea of multiculturalism. It's a form of pluralism, and all forms of pluralism are corrupting. You cannot compromise and think you're going to be acceptable. You think about ecumenicalism as a form of pluralism, political pluralism. This idea of bipartisan. Let's give a little bit to the other party that wants to kill babies and all of that stuff. There's no compromise with those people. You can't do it. It's destructive. That's why when you get to Daniel and you see Nebuchadnezzar in his dream of the four metals, the statue with the four metals, down at the very bottom, the fourth empire, which is Rome, had toes that were iron mixed with miry clay, and they don't mix. And that was Rome's weakness. Is when they went out and conquered people, they didn't make them change their culture and become Roman. They said, you can keep your religion, you can keep your culture, you can keep everything, just let us build our roads and pay your taxes and you're good. And it weakened Rome, and eventually it led to Rome's downfall. And so here God knows that, and I've spoken about this before. And so the other lesson, the manna, which represented the Word of God, the manna was not enough for them. They wanted more. They wanted to add. They desired things beyond what God had provided for them. And what ends up happening? It's not that God says, okay, you can do whatever you want to do. It's not God is not. He's upset with them, and so He's going to teach them a lesson. Same thing under the New Testament. What do the Pharisees do? God gave His commands and said, "This is my law. Keep my law." And what did the Pharisees do? They added to it. It wasn't enough what God gave them. They lusted after power, and they wanted more authority over the people, and so they made up other laws on top of that. And then under the New Testament, we have the same thing. Take a look at the denominations of the world. What all have they added? Because what God gave them isn't enough. God said to sing. They got to have their mechanical instruments because singing isn't enough. God said there needs to be a plurality of elders as the leaders of each autonomous local congregation. That's not enough. They got to have their synods and their conventions and their clergy laity systems with their priests and bishops and popes and cardinals and all of that. It's not enough. And so here they are in the wilderness, and the manna is not enough. The Word of God is not enough for them, and they are lusting after more. And the children of Israel also wept again and said, "Who shall give us flesh to eat?" Now understand, they have all of these animals already. They got sheep and they got oxen. They got all this stuff that's already there. But remember, God was requiring that a lot of that be used for sacrifice. And so they wanted something above and beyond even that. They wanted something above and beyond the sheep and the oxen and the things that God had already blessed them with. So the children of Israel wept again, and they wanted to eat the flesh. And then here's where it goes back to Egypt. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely. See, they didn't just want what they already had. They wanted fish now. Of course, they're out wandering in the desert where they're going to get fish. Which we did eat in Egypt freely. The cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. It was so wonderful back in Egypt. And God, you brought us out into this desert to die. So you see the complaining. It wasn't just we're hungry and you haven't given us enough to eat. That's not the type of complaining. The complaining is, God, we want to go back to Egypt. You brought us out. Well, we don't like that. We want to go back. And it's because of this mixed multitude lusting and they're the ones that are putting into the ear of the Egyptian or of the Israelites to go back to Egypt, and they're reminding them of all of the things. What are they going to have in the promised land? What are they going to get there? If they go directly, let's say they go to the, I don't remember exactly the time it takes, but they get there within the next few months, maybe a year, and they do everything that God says. 2 years they're out in the wilderness. They go in, they take the promised land. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. There's grapes everywhere. There's all kinds of amazing things in the promised land, and God is going to bless them, and they can have everything their heart desires if they would just do what God said to do. But instead of looking forward to what God had promised them, and God had always kept his promises, they're looking back to the slavery of Egypt. What does the New Testament say? I believe it's the New Testament. No man who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is worthy. When you look backwards, it's always a bad thing. But when you look forward, when you set your eyes upon God and you walk in the light, then that's when the good things happen. And that's what they should have been doing. And that's why God was angry with them, angry enough to destroy some of them. And they continue their complaining in verse 6. But now our soul is dried away. There's nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. So they're complaining. God, we're tired of this manna. It's all you give us. You know, how many people say that the Bible is not enough? God, I'm tired of reading the Bible. I've read the Bible. I understand the Bible. I need more. I want to know more. I want there to be miracles. I want there to be signs and wonders and all of these flashbang kind of things. Your Bible, your word is not enough for me, God. How many people say that today? There's nothing at all besides this manna. And the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof is the color of bdellium. And this bdellium is a kind of a what they call a false myrrh. It's produced kind of like myrrh is. It's a resin from trees. It's a kind of a murky white color. You might think of it as an off-white. And so the manna was kind of like an off-white. It's a bit of a bread-like wafer, essentially. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it into mills, or beat it into mortar, or beat it in a mortar, and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil. And so they ate it. It wasn't great in terms of taste. Remember, when people think of fleshly things and they think of physical things, they're wanting if you think about like bread is good and tasty. Everybody likes bread. But if I could put jam on it, or I could put some syrup on it, or I could turn it into a cake, or I could make it something better. You know, people are not satisfied with just the idea of bread. And so here God provides something that they need, something that will sustain them and provide all of the health that will get them to where they need to go. And it is sufficient for them. Just like God's word is all sufficient. 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. All scripture is given by inspiration of God, that the man of God may be complete, thoroughly furnished unto every good work. I don't need anything else besides the Bible. You don't hear me going through these lessons referring to any other commentaries or any other scholars or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just looking at the Bible and telling you what I think it means. And don't take my word for it. I'm not anybody. I'm not a big deal. Okay? I'm just telling you what I think. And hopefully that will spur your own studies, and you'll go and you'll read this, and maybe you'll learn something that I don't know. And I'd be grateful if you came back and told me, because I don't know everything. But God's word has to be enough for us. It has to be all sufficient for everything that we need. We can't be desiring more than what God has given us in this time, because it's wrong. Be content with what God has given us. When the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. So this is how it typically worked. And then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families. And this weeping here is not just a sad or something is wrong or whatever. This is the weeping of a brat throwing a temper tantrum because they don't get their way. This is that kind of weeping. Is they are just complaining, and they're mad, and they're like, oh, I'm so tired of these, just that constant, just bratty. You can imagine them on the ground, flailing their arms and their legs, beating the ground because they're so angry. That's what this is. So Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. So everybody is in the door of their tent, making a big deal out of the fact that they have to eat manna, and it's not enough. And so the anger of Jehovah was kindled greatly, and Moses also is displeased. Because Moses knows, Moses understands where God's coming from. And so you can understand why God's anger is kindled against these people. They want to go back to slavery. They want to go back to the way things were. And the things that he's giving them, the very food that they eat, he's providing directly to them. Wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to go to the store every few days to get food? Wouldn't it be great if I didn't have to expend any of my income on feeding my family because God delivered a basket right outside my door every morning? I wake up, there'd be the basket of food. And that'd be true of everybody. You walk out your front door, and God has provided a basket of food, all you need for the day. That'd be awesome. But it wasn't enough for them. And so God is angry. Verse 11, and Moses said unto Jehovah, wherefore have you afflicted your servant? Wherefore have I not found favor in your sight, that you lay the burden of all those people on me? Moses is just like, look, I'm so fed up. Why have you chosen me to lead these whiny, stubborn, annoying people? What did I do to deserve this? This is basically what he's asking. He's frustrated with the people. And then he goes on and says, have I conceived all these people? In other words, are these my offspring? Are they my children? Am I responsible for them the way I'm responsible for my kids? Have I begotten them, that you should say unto me, carry them in your bosom, as a nursing father bears the suckling child into the land which you swear unto their fathers? Moses is like, you've made me responsible for these people, and they're not even my kids. But they're acting like kids. They're acting like little bit spoiled brats. And you're making me take care of them. So Moses is frustrated, and rightfully so. And then he says, from where should I have flesh to give unto all these people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. So they're wailing, and they're throwing a temper tantrum. We want meat. I'm not able to bear all this people alone because it is too heavy for me. Moses is saying, I can't do it. Think of 2 million people constantly just coming at him, and he's the only guy. And if you deal thus with me, you might as well kill me, is what he says. I pray you, out of hand, just do it. Just kill me. I'm done. If I have found favor in your sight, and let me not see my wretchedness. He's just done. He's over it. And it's because they're a bunch of whiny babies. And Jehovah, you can imagine, they're both upset with the Israelites. So Jehovah's sitting there going, I hear you, Moses. I understand. I get it. I do. And so Jehovah says unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people. This idea of elders here is men who are wise, who have leadership qualities. So the elders are not just old people, but the idea of the elders of the people are men that others will look up to and listen to, and officers over them. Okay, so that idea here is officers. So elder is the wisdom, and we have these words in the New Testament too. When we look at the office of what's commonly referred to in the Church of Christ as elders, that's the presbyteros. The presbyteros are the presbytery, the older men who have wisdom, who have experience, who have their own family, their own children are Christians, and they're good leaders. If you look at the qualifications in Titus 1 and 1 Timothy 3, the elders there, and then you look at Acts chapter 20, and it talks about the the shepherding of the flock. That's the poimen side of it, the guarding of the flock and the feeding of the flock. And then you have the episkopos, which is the bishops or the overseers. All of those are wrapped up into the same office. Well, we see it here under the Old Testament as well. The elders, the officers, the people who the people would listen to, essentially. It says, bring them into the tabernacle of the congregation, and hold on here, I gotta make sure my little one's sick, and so I gotta make sure every now and then if Heather needs me for something, but all is well. She's fine. I think she just wore herself out over the weekend, but anyway, so these guys were going to be, these 70 guys were called out of Israel that Moses knew, and they were going to be brought to the tabernacle of the congregation, and they can stand there with you, is what God says to Moses. And I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon you, and will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you bear it not yourself alone. Now, understand this. Moses is a type of Christ. Moses is a lawgiver. Okay, of course, God is giving it through Moses. Under the New Testament, Jesus says, I'm not speaking of myself, but that which the Father has given me, I'm going to speak to you. So, in that sense, Jesus is the New Testament lawgiver. And so Moses is the type, Jesus is the antitype. What did God do here? Moses, I'm going to take what you're supposed to be doing, and we're going to, I'm going to give them the Spirit that you have, and I'm going to give it to these 70, and they're going to take that burden from you, that burden of the preaching of the gospel, not completely from him. Moses was still the primary leader of this rabble, but they would have authority under Moses to handle this. And so he takes the Spirit, a part of the Spirit from Moses, and hands it to these 70. Well, what happened in the New Testament? First of all, Jesus gave the ability to do certain things to 70 disciples, and they come back to him and they say, even the demons are subject to our power. They're healing people, and they're able to go out and spread the good news that the Messiah had come to the poor, the lost, the dying, and they did a wonderful thing. And then what happens when we get to Jesus as the resurrected king and high priest? He tells the apostles, he breathes on them, says, receive ye the Holy Spirit. And then what happens to them on the day of Pentecost? They receive the Holy Spirit, and they are able to go out and to preach the gospel and to do the mission that Jesus gave them to do. And so there's this type antitype that's going on here. It's a repeating of some of the elements so that we understand what's going on. This is not just a thing that happened. It's not just a historical event. It's a pointer to what we see happen in the New Testament so that we understand it better. And so it says, they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you do not bear it yourself alone. And say unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and you shall eat flesh. So God's saying, set yourselves up, prepare, because tomorrow you're going to eat flesh. For you have cried, you have wept, you have thrown your little temper tantrum in the ears of Jehovah, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. So God is saying, be prepared. You asked for flesh, and you pointed back to Egypt. So he's not done being angry with them. Listen to the way that this, growing up I heard about how God provided manna and he provided quail, but I didn't get this part of the quail message. I didn't get this part of the the idea, because I was always presented to me as God providing for them. But God is this is not an act of providence so much as this is an act of, think about the prodigal son. What did the father do? He said, all right, you want all your money? Here it is. You go do with it as you want. He gave him what he wanted. Even though it wasn't the best thing for the son, God allows us to make choices. Even the bad choices. He allows us that freedom. So the father in the story of the prodigal son gives him what he asked for. Guy goes out and blows it all and ends up sleeping with the pigs, the unclean animals. Here, they're whining and complaining. God's going to give them what they ask for. Who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore Jehovah will give you flesh, and you shall eat. You shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, or 20 days, but a whole month, until it come out of your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because that you have despised Jehovah which is among you, and have wept. Again, this weeping here. This is the crybaby type stuff before him, saying, why came we out of Egypt? Why did you bring us out here, God? We don't even have the good stuff to eat now. It's not sufficient what God has actively provided for them. They want more. So God's going to give them more, and he's going to give it to them so much that they're going to be sick of it. You know, it's one of the interesting things about sin is it feels enticing. But we know that the end of sin is horrible. And sometimes, if you're fortunate and you get pulled into sin, maybe before you became a Christian, I've heard tale of this multiple times. The pulling into sin, you are just completely immersed in it. You've had so much of it that you're sick of it. You're like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? It's like a kid that eats a whole package of Oreos. Not that I'm speaking from personal experience, but you eat the whole package of Oreos. Oreos are tasty. It's my favorite cookie. Okay? But you eat that whole pack of Oreos, you are going to pay for it. It is awful. I drank sodas growing up. It was like most people. I can't drink them anymore. I will maybe have a small cup of Mountain Dew or something once a month or something. But this is either water or unsweet tea. Because if I drink this whole thing of Coke, I will pay for it for a week. And that's what God's doing here. He's like, all right, you want what you want instead of what I provided? I'm going to give it to you until you're sick of it. Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen. In other words, the military is footmen. 600,000, and you have said, I will give them flesh that they may eat a whole month. Shall the flocks and the herds be slain for them to suffice them? In other words, all of the stuff they already had. The animals, remember, they're shepherding all of these animals through the wilderness for the sacrifices and for eating and stuff. So it's not like they don't have meat, but they have to ration it because they need those for their sacrifices they were required. So they could only eat so much. And so Moses is like, you're going to give them enough for a whole month, or we're going to just kill everything we got? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to suffice them? Are we going to go over to the waters and we're just going to pull up all of the fish in the ocean? And Jehovah said unto Moses, is Jehovah's hand waxed short, that you shall see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not? So God's like, do you trust me? Can I not do what I say I'm going to do? Just sit back, Moses, and watch. So Moses went out and told the people the words of Jehovah, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about their tabernacle. And Jehovah came down in a cloud, and spake unto him, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass, that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. Now, this does not mean that they were 24/7 continually prophesying, speaking messages from God. What this means is that their ability to speak, because remember, prophecy is not, a lot of people, when they hear the word prophecy, they think, oh, they're telling the future. I think it's some kind of crystal ball medium kind of thing, and we're going to tell you what's going to happen in the next day or the next month or whatever. Prophesying is just speaking with the authority of God. So you might be talking about something that happened in the past, when Moses was giving the law that God had given him to give to the people. He was prophesying. Everything that has to do with prophesying is just giving information from God. And so these men, they were given the authority to speak as if they were Moses, the same way that Moses was able to speak. And so they spoke with the authority from God to carry out what they needed to do to take some of that burden off of Moses. And that's what it means that they did not cease, is that when they spoke, they were speaking accurately and in a way that was very, very helpful. So, but there remained 2 of the men in the camp, and the name of the one was Eldad, and the name of the other Medad. And the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written. So out of the 70, the names, God gave names, and those 70 were supposed to be called, but these 2 guys didn't show up for whatever reason. But they did not go out into the tabernacle, and they prophesied in the camp. And there ran a young man and told Moses, and said, Eldad and Medad do prophesy in the camp. Hey, there's these 2 guys that didn't come to the meeting, but they're out there prophesying. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men, answered and said, My lord Moses forbid them. They didn't come to the meeting. They don't get to do that. And Moses said unto him, Are you envious of what they are doing for my sake? Would to God that all Jehovah's people were prophets, and that Jehovah will put his spirit upon them. Moses was like, don't tell those guys to stop. I wish that all 2 million of you were able to do this, because then I wouldn't have that burden anymore. So he's like, don't begrudge them. Moses is like, I'm glad they're out there doing it, taking some charge there. So Moses got him into the camp, he and the elders of Israel, and they went forth, and there went forth a wind from Jehovah, and brought quail from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on this side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side. So these quail come and they fall dead outside the camp, from the edge of the camp until a day's journey. We're talking miles of quail round about the camp, as it were 2 cubits high. Guys, that's 3 feet. A cubit is from fingertip to elbow. That's about 1.5 feet. That's 3 feet deep. So 3 feet deep for miles. 2 million people, as it were 2 cubits high up on the face of the earth. And the people stood up all that day and all that night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered the least, the person that gathered the least, gathered 10 homers or omers. Well, what is a homer? Okay, it's 58 gallons. Looked it up. 58 gallons. The least person gathered 580 gallons worth of quail meat. And they spread them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, ere it was chewed, the wrath of Jehovah was kindled against the people, and Jehovah smote the people with a very great plague. So you can imagine, they got their meat. And they were so glad to get their meat that they just ate and they stuffed themselves. And God hits them with a plague. And you can imagine people dying from this gluttonous behavior of eating so much meat that, God said it's going to be coming out your nose. That's how much they were going to be eating. And from eating this quail, and again, this is one of those things that I was never taught as a kid. When God provided the quail, I was never told that people ate so much that they got a plague and died from it. That they got a disease from eating so much. And so they called the name of that place Kibroth Hadavah, because there they buried the people that lusted it. And I looked this one up. Kibroth Hattaavah. It means the graves of lust, because they lusted after, they desired things that they shouldn't have desired. There was no need for them. They had everything that God had provided for them, and yet they still wanted more. And so they buried some people there. And then the people journeyed from Kibroth Hattaavah unto Hazeroth, not Azeroth, for those of you who play World of Warcraft, Hazeroth, and abode at Hazeroth. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 11, and the real story of the quail. And it's kind of like Paul Harvey. I don't know. Some of my younger viewers probably don't know who that is, but all of my older viewers definitely will. We read the story of God providing the quail out in the wilderness. Well, here's the rest of the story. So, but let's move into chapter 12. It's a short chapter. It's midnight here, and I probably should get to bed, but I'm going to do chapter 12 here real quick. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. Now, who is this? This Ethiopian woman. This is Jethro's daughter. Remember that. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. Why is this important? Remember, Moses is the head. He's not a king, but he's the leader of the people. God has chosen him to be the leader of the people, but he did not marry in the family. Remember, that's an important thing to these people. And he married somebody that was far, far removed. They were not of Israel. She was not of Israel. And so Zipporah was a Midianite, Ishmaelite, wherever you want to take the genealogy back to. She was from Ethiopia. And this Miriam and Aaron, brother and sister of Moses, are like, we're gonna be racist here. We're gonna bring up the fact that Moses is not married to an Israelite, because to the Israelite, to the Jew, that was everything. They misunderstood what being an Israelite meant. They misunderstood what it meant to be chosen. That to be chosen by God meant that you were a chosen vessel to bring blessings to all of the rest of the world. Not because God was saying that you were better than the rest of the world. That's not what that means. I got 3 kids. If I say to my son, son, here's a dessert, and I've given you 3 plates of this dessert, and I want you to take this dessert to your siblings, to your sisters. I have chosen him to bring a blessing to all of my children. Now, he may choose not to do that. He may eat that all himself and probably get sick doing so, or he may comply. Knowing my son, he would definitely comply because he's just a sweet boy. But by me choosing him, I'm not saying that he is special above my daughters. It's just I've chosen him for a specific purpose, and he is going to complete that purpose by bringing the blessing to the other 2 of my children. In the same way, God chose a weak, stubborn, annoying, think of almost in a sense the worst possible nation that he could pick in terms of physicalness to bring a blessing, to show that it's God that's bringing the blessing, not the Israelites. But here Miriam and Aaron are like, Moses, you didn't marry an Israelite. You married outside of the family. And so they're speaking bad against him. And they said, hath Jehovah indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? So Aaron, getting on his high horse, he's the high priest, right? So he's like, well, God's spoken by me. I'm the high priest. Miriam, being the sister, she's a prophetess. Is God speaking through her? And so they're like, we want some of the glory that Moses is getting. That's essentially where this is going. They're down talking Moses to make themselves look better. When we watch movies like The Prince of Egypt, we see Miriam as the little girl who watches Moses in the basket as he makes his way to eventually what some think are Nefertiti, the daughter of Pharaoh. And she's there protecting him, kind of watching, make sure he gets somewhere safe. And then when they come up out of the land of Moses, she's there looking up at her brother, her little brother, with love in her eyes as they just march out. And you can see her hands just gently on him, just supporting him as they leave Egypt and everything. And so she's presented as this wonderful person. And that's not to say that she didn't have her moments, that she wasn't a good person when those moments came. But she also was human, and she made bad choices too. Also remember, she's older than Moses here. Here we are, Moses is 82, and she's older by a few years. So she's, if not 90, she's getting pretty close to it. But remember also, they lived a lot longer. So she's late middle age. And so her and Aaron, who both of them are older, are wanting some of this glory that Moses has got. And so they said, has he not also spoken by us? And God hears it. Jehovah hears it. Now, listen to this description of Moses. Now, the man Moses was very meek. That's not weak, but meek, above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. Don't really hear that much. When we think about Moses, sometimes he's presented to us as maybe the warrior against Pharaoh, or maybe the coward when he's first given the commission. But this idea of him as a meek leader, somebody who has reserved power, that he restrains himself. The idea here is that he's the opposite of what Miriam and Aaron are. They want the glory. What is Moses saying? Oh, God, please take this burden from me. I don't want all this authority. He's doing the opposite. He's trying to divest himself of it. Because Moses has never wanted the limelight or the power. And so and this is probably, in my estimation, one of the reasons that God chose Moses, is because Moses did not seek after power. He was a very meek man, above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. See, we're getting into Noah territory here. We're getting into a territory where God has chosen somebody who's actually a really great person. Think about everything that he's done. While he's in Egypt, he tries to protect his own people, even though he lives as a prince, the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He protects his own people. And then what happens when he gets to the land of Jethro? He drives off the men and brings up water for the girls. He goes after the sheep and is a shepherd and protects his flock. And eventually, what does he do? He stands against Pharaoh. He's a good guy. Moses is an amazing person. And I think this is one of the now Adam in his way is a type of Christ. We see that in Romans 5, but Moses is a type of Christ, and there's a reason for it. He's an amazing person. And here his siblings are a little bit jealous. Jehovah spake suddenly unto Moses, and unto Aaron, and unto Miriam. So he speaks to all three of them. Come out, you three, into the tabernacle of the congregation. So God's like, come here, I want to talk to the three of you. And they three came out. And Jehovah came down on the pillar of the cloud, and stood in the door of the tabernacle. So you can imagine the cloud is either up above the tabernacle, or at certain times in the mercy seat in the altar during certain ceremonies or whatever. But for the most part, it's up above the tabernacle. And so the cloud comes down, and it's kind of like, I'm not speaking from up here on high. Comes down to the doors. Look, I want to talk to the three of you. And so it says, and stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, Jehovah, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. So God says, if there's somebody that's a prophet, I'm going to speak to them a certain way. So God is saying that there's a certain way that I communicate to my prophets. But My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all my house. When they were building the golden calf, who was responsible? Aaron. Aaron was there building, I threw the gold in the fire and it just kind of leaped out, right? That's Aaron. But who was faithful? Who has been faithful to God this entire time? My servant Moses is not like everybody else. You've got these people out here who are complaining and whining and throwing a temper tantrum, and I'm still giving them the ability to prophesy, but I'm going to speak to them from a distance because their sin has separated between me and them. And so God speaks to them through dreams and visions. But Moses is my friend. Moses is my faithful servant, and I'm going to walk and talk with him. Understand that there's a different type of relationship that God has with Moses. And there's very few people, and as time goes by, there's fewer and fewer people that God has that kind of relationship with. Moses is a very special person. And here Aaron and Miriam are talking bad about him. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently. That means that people know it and see it, and it's obvious that I'm speaking to him. And not in dark speeches, in the similitude of Jehovah shall he behold. Wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant? In other words, I talked to Moses face to face in clear messages as I'm talking to you right now. Why then are you not afraid to speak against this man that I have chosen? Why would you talk bad about him? Why would you think that you could do something like that? And the anger of Jehovah was kindled against them, and he departed. So imagine this. God calls you over. God calls the three siblings over. They've been talking bad about Moses. And then he's like, Aaron, Miriam, I want to talk to you. Your brother, your little brother, I have chosen as my servant. He is faithful. He is good. And you're talking bad about him. And he's angry with them. And then he just walks away. Now remember, this is the God that consumes people with fire. This is the guy that the God that brings plagues. This is the God that when he is upset, he has every right, ability, and authority to kill you. And here they were talking bad about his chosen servant, his friend, the friend of God. And he chews him out and says, why would you do that? And then he just goes. I think that would be the scariest thing right there. That God is, and like, okay, when's the lightning going to hit, right? So the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous. So it finally hits, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. Now why doesn't Aaron get something here? So Miriam becomes leprous because I think she's the one that started this. Miriam became leprous, white as snow, and Aaron looked upon Miriam. Behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech you, lay not the sin upon us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. See, here's Aaron coming back. Oh, we acted like idiots again. Please don't hold this against us. Forgive us, we repent, we acted like fools. And let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb. Okay? Let her not be the person that is going to die from this. And Moses cried unto Jehovah, saying, Heal her now, O God, I beseech you. This is his sister. Moses is saying, please God, heal her, I don't want her to die. Jehovah said unto Moses, If her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that let her be received again. So God's going to let her think about it for 7 days outside the camp. Remember, if you have leprosy, you have to go outside the camp. So she has to go outside the camp for 7 days. She has to think about what she did. and then after that she'll be fine. And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed not until Miriam was brought in again. And afterward the people removed from Hazeroth and pitched in the wilderness of Paran. So you have two sets of people here. Two sets of people that complain. Chapter 11, chapter 12. They're not happy with the food that God had brought to them. They're not happy with the way that God had divided out the responsibility, the authority, the glory of leadership. Of course, Moses is like, I don't want all of this responsibility. Please help me, take it from me, or just go ahead and kill me. It's too much. And Miriam and Aaron are like, Moses got all this power, all this authority. But you know what? He married an Ethiopian woman. And they were talking bad about it. And God doesn't like it. God doesn't want us talking bad about each other. God doesn't want us talking bad about our leadership. Think about the New Testament. How many, when an accusation has to be brought against the elders, or one of the elders, what do you have to do? There's extra special rules that you can't just have one or two people involved. You've got to have three witnesses above the accuser to say, yes, I saw the elder do this sin and he needs to be rebuked, or I've heard the elder teaching this wrong thing and he needs to be rebuked or removed. Receive not an accusation against an elder except it be by above and beyond the number of witnesses for a regular accusation. So God doesn't like it. He doesn't like the complaining. He doesn't like the infighting. He doesn't like any of this. And in the Old Testament times, fire, leprosy, and thank goodness for Miriam that Moses was there to plead to God, hey, don't let her die from it. And so he didn't. Anyway, that's Israel, and it doesn't get any better. They have a few good days here and there, but this is mostly what Israel is throughout their history. A bunch of whiny baby, complaining, annoying people. And that's kind of part of the plan, because God wanted to have a people that were not the best, because he wanted everyone to know that it was he that brought about the promise, the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham, not because of anything that Israel, special, specific, inherent in the people, did. So, but that's it. That's it for those two chapters. Thank you for listening. Again, if you like, hit subscribe, hit the little alarm bell thing. You'll get notifications when I put up new videos. Share this, spread it around if you think others would benefit from it, and I really appreciate you coming along for the ride as we do this study. If you have any questions, you can message me. I'm still on Facebook Messenger. I still have my account on Facebook, even though I don't really push there anymore, and I don't read the wall there anymore. It's just too negative, but still do Swordmaster. So you can message me there. You can write comments underneath the message or the videos themselves. You can text me if you have my number. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with me if you have questions you want to talk about this stuff. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and y'all have a wonderful evening.